All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Here today with your host, Richard Fu from richardfu.com and The Ultimate Man. And today, guys, I got a secret weapon on, right? This guy, when I heard about him and I started looking into him, he instantly becomes the author's secret weapon because everyone should actually be an author in their own life. And not only that, we've had amazing guests like Dan Priestley, Glenn Carlson come on this show and actually say the book that you should be reading isn't the one that someone else has written, but the one that you've written. And so it's my absolute pleasure and absolute honor to have this guy on, right, who's going to teach you how to write a book, but also to get it to bestseller. And he is an amazing guy. And I wish I actually worked with him earlier when I was putting together my book to actually, make it even bigger than where it is. And so, guys, I want you to say welcome to Jesse Krieger. Jesse, good to have you on, brother.
How's it going, Richard? Thanks for that introduction. Nice to be here.
Yeah, man. It's great to have you on, brother. And so, Jesse, man, for the people who haven't heard about you before, man, could you give us a bit of a brief rundown about yourself and your journey to where you're at right now, man?
Sure. Well, if you see behind me, where we're at right now is Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press headquarters. I've got a bunch of books hanging up behind me. I run a publishing company that really works with authors who are taking an entrepreneurial approach, people writing about business, personal development, self-help, healthy lifestyles, and these types of books. And we really look at a book as, one part of your overall business and brand. Indeed, a foundational part. And, sort of my background, depends how long we have on the podcast, but, I started out totally different field. I was in music. I played electric guitar. I was in bands most of my years growing up. My first actual business was having a band, being 21, 22, and realizing that we could have control of our creative side of our career. We could have more control over our career as a band if we started an actual business, actually forming a record label to handle our band's affairs and raising some money and taking that approach. That was sort of my introduction to entrepreneurship. And from there, over my 20s, I've founded or co-founded 4 or 5 different businesses. And on the tail end of that, I really wrote my book, Lifestyle Entrepreneur. And now that's been out 3 or 4 years. And the last couple of years, I really extended the learning lessons from going through the experience as an author firsthand with 2 different publishers to create our publishing company, which is, I'll just say, a little bit different than the other publishing companies out there.
Oh, I love it. And Jesse, I know this, guys, is Jesse just being a little bit humble here because I did some research on you, Jesse. And, you are the lifestyle entrepreneur, right? When I heard about you, I'm like, really? Lifestyle entrepreneur? And I got to say, seriously, Jesse, I counted. Yeah. And you've gone through pretty much like 8 career changes in your whole life. And this is probably before even like hitting like mid-30s, right? So you have experienced a lot in your own life. And guys, for a quick rundown of what Jesse's actually gone through, he's gone from a rock star to opening up his own record label, then founding a consulting group. Jump in, Jesse, if I'm getting it wrong, right?
No, this is interesting to hear. Please go on.
yeah, and then get this, guys. He went into a similar path like what I did. Was he went into date coaching, right? He was a dating coach. Then from there, you transformed yourself into a guy who's opened a business, started selling USBs, right? USB sticks in China that went crazy, and then all of a sudden, it was an ultimate twist of going back to full-time study. Full-time student, right? Back at, I think it was at UC Berkeley, right?
Yeah.
And then
you did good research.
Yeah, because I looked at your life, man. I'm like, wow. And then on top of that, after that, then you started going into writing and sharing your stories through what your whole experience is. And now you're helping other people do.
What I think is really interesting, if I look back over my whole adult life, is that in sum total, I did everything that, say, my parents hoped I would, or that I would have hoped for myself, but it happened in a very, very different order. As you mentioned, I actually, it wasn't so much going back to school as it was, I went to university for the first time at age 26, 27. And yeah, as you mentioned, threw myself into that. So by the time I turned 30, I had gone to a good school. I had started a business. I had made and lost money. But it happened almost in reverse order. Whereas the beginning of my 20s, you know, all I wanted to do is play music, travel around in a rock band, you know, throw the middle finger to the world of being normal. And yes, I did have a stint, actually 3 or so years, as a professional dating coach, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah,
And you know, I use the little quotation marks because anybody in the industry knows that that's a euphemistic term. But you know, that was a great experience as well, to be able to travel around and build a really cool core group of friends in the context of helping other people and having fun adventures. Sure, all of that played into ultimately writing about that. What's sort of the blueprint to have an interesting life, which became Lifestyle Entrepreneur.
Yeah, man. And the thing I want to honor you the most for is, Jesse, is that, you know, it seems like, you know, for most people, having those huge shifts, those huge, we'll call them career changes in life, really, like, they take a lot of effort. They take a lot of, like, you know, strain and stress on people. But for you, it seems like, you know, you really just knew that you just decided on something, right? At that point in time, it felt like, for example, I was reading, you know, on your website, when you decide that the music industry wasn't really what you wanted to do anymore, you know, and then you just went out and did it, right? And I know on there it sounds simple, but, you know, I want just to take us back to those moments, man, where you had to, you know, you decide to, we'll call it pivot, right? You decide to pivot into something new. How hard was that, man? And I like to actually unravel that a bit more, because I think sometimes when we pivot, it makes it sound easy, but it actually isn't, is it, man?
No, it's not hard. And sorry, it can be a difficult thing. I'm just actually thinking about the best way to phrase the response to that. What I've always followed is my own, you know, internal guidance. Sometimes it's a very quiet voice. Sometimes it's like, you have to do this now. But as long as I've listened to that and identified the right voice of intuition, then changing what looks like a dramatic shift in my career, my business, my life focus, externally, sure, it looks incongruous perhaps. And that's a lot of what I heard, you know, growing up, and as I would change from one thing to another. And really all I can say now at 34 years old is that it makes sense in hindsight, but moving from one thing to another, I didn't perceive of it as being hard, but rather there were very distinct points where I was like, all right, this course of action, this business, this career, this language I'm studying, whatever, has exhausted its utility, and I could see something else becoming more interesting or more exciting on the horizon. It's fascinating because I've found I only get that clarity in the course of taking a lot of action. So, you know, in the course of building our record label, building our band, touring the country 2 times. We had music on hundreds of radio stations, on MTV. And still in the back of my mind, there was this voice that was like, you know, I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 40. And so then it threw up this question, which I couldn't answer for a long time, was, well, this is all I ever wanted to do. What else would I actually do? And so in the context of that, you know, still externally, everybody sees me as the lead guitarist, the co-writer, the guy that runs the business. But in my mind, I'm playing with what else would I do next and how would I make that transition? So if it's hard, it's only because there's emotion attached to letting go of something that you've already created, or the potential to hurt somebody else's feelings or whatever. But the actual change itself, I think, is part of life. And there's different seasons of life. It's just, you know, whether or not you advance through them is largely a function of your own choices and resulting actions.
Oh, brother, man, when you just shared about that, about the real thing is to let go, is about the emotional attachment that we have to it. You know, really hanging on to maybe if I could sum it up, it sounds like it's hanging on to our current identity, right, of who we think we are or who we think the world wants us to be, right? And
well, I've never been so concerned with who the world wants me to be. I'm aware of this vague concept of what the world, quote unquote, may want me to be. But you touched on the key word, I think, is identity, and the conception of identity that we have. Really, it's what I wrote about in the first few chapters of Lifestyle Entrepreneur, because I think it's at the foundation for these manifestations that people see: writing a book, learning a language, living in other countries, starting businesses. Those are all a subset in my opinion, of an identity that you're trying to form or that you're living into.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that changes over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the exciting part of life, right?
Yeah.
As long as you keep following that, there's actually endless number of variations on the theme of life that we can explore.
Beautifully said, man. Beautifully said. And so, I just want to ask one question, Jesse, because, you were saying that it's like a little voice, right, that talks in your head, at the back of your head, behind all that noise, right? So then how do you, and you say most of the times is that it's when you're in action and you're doing a lot of things and things are growing and exploding, and then all of a sudden, that's when the voice will say, everything deafens, and then you can actually listen to it. And so how do you find, or if people are listening here and they're thinking, how do I listen to my voice? What would you tell them, man? What piece of advice would you share with them so that they could get into really feeling and listening into what's important to them?
Yeah. The simplest way to put it, because it's so easy to overcomplicate this, is the simplest thing is if you feel called to do something, if you feel driven to travel, to study a language, if you feel called to write a book, then you're actually meant to do it.
Mm.
And, if you just sit with that for a moment, it clears away all the clutter. We spend a lot of energy in the place of indecision, meaning when you're evaluating a choice, when you're weighing your options, that's actually expending a large amount of mental energy that is not forward moving.
Mm.
And so is the sooner that you listen to that voice or try taking new action is the point at which you start to experience new results and outcomes. And those things in accumulation filter into and help formulate your identity. So, at the end of the day, if you're in a situation where you feel like there's a small voice in the back of your head, but you're not acknowledging it, or you think it's not right, but you're totally unhappy in the current life situation that you have, then maybe it's time to start paying more attention to it and being less concerned about what other people may think, do, react, feel accordingly. I mean, a big, if you're in the dating space, the whole underlying reason that I stayed in that place so long was to totally sever the tie between expectation of an outcome, taking action, and being attached to the outcome. Mm-hmm. And it becomes almost a Zen practice to play 100% when you're taking action and still be totally divorced from the actual outcome of any given action. The analogy here, your viewers will probably relate to is like if you're going up and you're approaching women and you go up fully, congruently, confidently, you express yourself to the best degree possible, and she shuts you down.
Yeah.
If you can be completely divorced from that and just say, okay, that didn't work, let's try something else, and repeat, you do that hundreds of times and you start to see what I call sort of the social matrix. If you do it thousands of times, you have an innate understanding of human nature that few people actually get to experience, because, well, I'll just leave it there for a second. But as you divorce your action from outcome and expectation, then you're able to be more objective and, in my opinion, rational about the next decisions you take, and more ultimately in charge of the direction of your life. So you can't determine the outcomes from the actions you take, but in sum total, as long as you do enough, you get the real information, the real input, and ultimately the results that when I think back on, when we talk about highlights, things I've done, those are the results of things that actually worked after trying 50, 100, 1,000 other things that didn't work, right? The ones that work, great. It makes a memory, it makes a story, it makes a relationship, it makes a business. And the extent to which you can be flexible in the times when you don't have total clarity is I think a big part of the overall game, especially in entrepreneurship.
I love how you bring that up, man, because it's so often there's a huge uncertainty, there's huge unknowns in anything we do, right? Like, and I think this leads so well into what you do here in the Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, is that it's not about, whether your book sells 1,000,000 copies or it sells 100 and still goes to number one, right? It's all about really, the message that you have in the book. And if you can get that message out to the people that matter, the people that need it most, then that's you making a huge impact, right? If you change one person's life, and this is what I believe in, is that, you've made an impact when you change that one person's life because they needed it, right? And so, talk us through a bit more about the Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, man. And you said that it's different from other publishers, and what makes that your publishing company a bit different from the traditional publishers?
Sure. I mean, sort of us being here on this podcast is a useful example of how or why I wound up in publishing. I wrote my book. It came out 3 some years ago. And it was always my goal to use the book as a foundation to do entrepreneurship training, to do online programs, to have coaching clients and other assorted things around the ideas in the book. And so I played that out. And over the course of a year and a half, built a 6-figure business, training entrepreneurs, helping people launch businesses in the style that I described in the book. Indeed, in the style that I had myself pursued over the course of my 20s. And at the tail end of that run, I'd say 18 months, maybe 2 years, I got the intuition that, wow, there's a lot of other authors who, one, aren't thinking of would-be authors and authors that aren't thinking of their book as their best business development tool. And that I saw a lot of people spinning their wheels trying to get attention from large publishers, or frustrated with the self-publishing where you have to learn everything and do a whole bunch of stuff and have a stigma attached to self-publishing. So I created a third option, which was, we do full service publishing. We do the book cover design, the layouts, the editing, but also provide strategic guidance on how the book launch is really just one step in the ultimate promotion and business development capability. So we work with people on a broader strategic plan and handle all of the publishing, as well as launch the book as part of the service that we provide. So I don't see any other publishers out there really doing that. Some talk about doing marketing, but it ends up being like sending out 1 or 2 press releases. Whereas we'll, like right now, I know it won't be right now when somebody's watching this, but as we're recording this, we're launching a book called Limitless Women. And it's by my business partner, Laura Gisborne. She's a very inspirational lady, a coach, 9-time entrepreneur. But this book is sort of how women can be more, it's International Women's Day here, by the way. And, how women can be more empowered and make more bold choices. So, we're launching it on International Women's Day. And since there's a charity tie-in with the book, we're actually giving it away for free. Normally we like to launch at a discounted price, but today, and sort of to illustrate this point, right, giving as many books away for free as we can, yes, gets it visible within Amazon's charts, but more importantly, gets it into hundreds, probably 1,000 plus people's hands just today. And inside the book, you're reading it, it's a good book. I actually wrote the foreword for it. And inside the book, there are mentions of she has a live event, which is also called Limitless Women, that's coming up in a few months. So if you put it in context, some people come and say, oh, I want to make money off selling my book. Well, the good and bad news is that books are not a very high priced item, even though they're a very high value item. But within a book, you get to know somebody, you get to understand if you'd want to learn from them or do something else with them. And so part of our strategy is building in those pathways of how a reader can progress into a customer and client. So we'll see the results in a few months, but I would imagine doing this book launch and giving away hundreds, if not 1,000 plus copies will result in, let's see how many people come to the live event. Because live events are where the real transformation happens. And for somebody that's a coach that does long-term work with clients, it's better to have people in a room experiencing her live event before deciding if they want to become a client. So even if you followed that whole description, right, the book is actually one piece. And then in this case, a book to a live event. And from the live event comes, 5-figure coaching packages and long-term support. at that point, somebody has qualified themselves enough to be a really good fit. Mm-hmm. And so a book becomes casting a wide net on the front end to see who are the people that ultimately escalate up to be your top level clients and customers.
I love it, man. And it's so pivotal, right? It's so important that people understand what's their intention behind the book, right? Like, we all want a good book out there. And then I think you find that a lot of clients come to you and they're like, Jesse, I'm not a very good writer, man. All these blocks, right? All these blocks of, I don't know, I don't want to put in a crappy book, right? Or I want my book to be just the one book that just tells my life story, right? And for those kind of people, man, I mean, like, there's huge blocks, right? There's always huge blocks, and there's always the voices that pop up in our minds that I know when I was doing my book is like, oh, who are you to write a book, Richard? Oh, you're not even that good with English, man, right? And so, how do we? So on the flip side, we were talking about how do we listen to?
Let me address that, because that's the number one concern of authors, and I talk to a lot of authors, and I actually created what my friend Casper calls mental technology. So when you said, "Who am I to write a book?" Mm-hmm. I created, who am I to, as an acronym is wait. And so I say the longer that you wait, the less action, the less you have results. And waiting means asking, who am I to? Who am I to? Mm-hmm. So if you shift the question from who am I to do this and that to who can I help? Who can I serve with this material? Then it takes the emphasis off of you. Because quite frankly, as a first-time author, nobody really cares what your life story is, but people care about what problems you can help solve, what goals you can help them achieve. And so if you speak in that language and accentuate that with your own stories and experience, that's the right approach. That's the right format to get to know people through your story and experience, but not be this guy on a pedestal saying, I'm amazing, I'm great, listen to me, everything I do is gold and everybody else is crap.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love that analogy, man. Just the weight principle, basically. And beautiful, man. Thank you so much.
Don't wait another minute. You don't have to ask, who am I to? Just ask, who can you help?
Yeah.
Because the more, quite honestly, if you stay in that question of who can I help, who can I serve, then business becomes very fun, because then opportunities to get in front of and help people become a large part of your daily experience. Mm-hmm. And, I have maybe 4 or 5 calls with authors a day. This is the second media that I've done this week, and it's only Tuesday. And so my whole life is now oriented around how do I help and serve more people? And as a result, look behind you. I end up getting taken care of, and it's not the Jesse story, which is ironic, even though I lead with, I'm very out front with my own personality and experience, but it's really not about me at the end of the day. It's about me as a catalyst to help people, you as an author, to get better results. And, ultimately that's what people pay for, not to hang around with somebody they perceive as cool and and want to associate with. That's a bad business model.
I love that, man. I love that. And it really means a lot that you bring this up, man, because so often that, just like Dan Priestley said on one of our podcasts, is that, a lot of us get caught up into trying to be in the spotlight rather than being the spotlight for other people to shine in, right? To really bring value, and I love that you brought it up of, that question of who can I help and how can I help them in new ways? Because I was just chatting to my friend about that last night. And when you start asking yourself those questions, you actually start thinking in a different level, isn't it, man? And then you think about, really, how can I help them? But then it no longer becomes about you, and you just go out and you take more action because it's about someone else, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. You can chase that question pretty deep down the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, a lot of what very powerful coaching is asking that question in, time and time again in different ways. So one is, how can I help somebody at the point where I meet them, where they're looking for information? At a deeper level, what are the driving forces that are causing them to look for that information on an external level? The deeper level is what, injuries or wounds or long-held goals and aspirations are driving their overall motivation. And if you can start to speak to those different levels over the course of building a relationship with somebody, well, that's how people actually transform. And, at least if we're talking about coaching, live events, we're in the transformation business, not an information business, not just in, information is only so useful without action and accountability.
Love it, man. Love it. Jesse, man, this has been such an amazing interview, brother, man. And it pains me a lot to really say we got to start wrapping up here, man, because I could just go more and more with you, man. Let's go down that rabbit hole, right? Maybe one day
we'll have to do a round two at some point. Yeah. If the listeners agree with you, then I'll be happy to come back.
Yeah, man. Awesome, dude. We definitely must, man. We definitely must. And so, Jesse, man, as we wrap up the show, we have a few questions, right, to throw over your way. And, so basically one of our favorite and the most signature question we have here is what we call the time travel moment, right? So if you could go back in time, any time that you want, where we go back to little Jesse, we'll call him, right, back then. And if you could share one piece of advice with little Jesse back then, what would you say to him and which time period?
Gosh, there's a lot of places I could go, but if I went back to like 13, 14-year-old me, when I first got my first guitar, even though it's largely what I did in life, I would just be like, keep following this path. This is the right direction. Even when everybody else tells you that, you need to get a real job or do something else, just keep following that internal guidance, that internal voice.
Oh, beautiful, man. Love it. Love it. And so then the next question we have here is, Jesse, you're living the lifestyle entrepreneur's life. And so I'm sure to get to where you're at, there's certain practices or certain habits that you have in place, right? That you do almost, we would say, very, very religiously, that gets you to where you're at and to prepare you for your day. What is one of the habits, right, your own personal habits that have contributed to your success today, man?
Well, it's funny because, even when I travel, right now I travel a lot inside the US for speaking, for business, for clients. For many years, I did a lot of international travel and prolonged living in different places. No matter where I've been, I always try and keep a pretty consistent daily routine, which is, wake up, stretch, exercise. I train pretty hard because the harder I work out, the harder I push my body. Once that's over and recover and eat some food, then I'm at my most productive state. So I do my important work in that mindset, in that state. And then as we move into the afternoon, like now when we're starting to record this, I shift focus to doing media, talking to authors, talking to potential partners and things like that. And then the whole arc of the day is designed around, getting up, doing something that's exercise and gets the blood flowing, tackling the biggest projects, and then winding down with things that are more administrative, like responding to emails and accounting towards the very end after the majority of, the work has been done. So, when I'm working, if I'm taking off, I'm on vacation, then anything goes. But when I'm working, which is most of the time, then that's an outline for my day, no matter really where I am. And I think having that consistency has been very helpful because, otherwise it's hard. It's harder to predict results. It's harder to have consistent outcomes with having a lot of variables in play in my lifestyle.
Yeah, totally, man. And the way if you win the morning, then you end up winning the day, right? And that's what I love, man. So thank you for sharing that, dude. Just a few more left here, man. So all
right, yeah. Then I got to run soon, unfortunately.
All right, no worries, man. No worries. And so Jesse, for the guys on here, right? As part of the Ultimate Man, in the modern man's world, right? What do you think is missing in a modern man world that they really need to do? What is the modern man missing that they need to start actually doing or applying or taking action on so that they can actually leave that legacy that they must on this world, man? What do you think is the one thing?
It's simple. Making decisions. At the essence of being a leader, at the essence of being a man is making decisions and sticking to them until they no longer apply or are no longer useful. The longer that you spend in indecision or asking yourself, who am I to do this and that, the less, if you want to put it in stark terms, the less of a man you are, because it's a masculine quality to be decisive and to take leadership roles. And that's what is one of the foundational parts to being an attractive man as well.
Ah, awesome, man. Love it. Thank you, man. Thank you. And so just two more left, man. Two more left to wrap up. So, man, you help publish a lot of books, right? And so I'm guessing you've read a lot of books as well. But if there was one book, right, that was an absolute must read, what would that be, man?
If you got to pick one, and I would say it's Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Mm-hmm. It's not a small book. It's about 1,200 pages, but it is the work of over 10 years. And it's fiction, but there's more truth in that book, especially as it relates to leadership, entrepreneurship, than pretty much any business book that I've ever read. And that's why it's my favorite book ever.
Oh, wow. I got to put that. We'll add that to the show notes as well, man. 1,200 pages.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. And our final question here, man, is, so Jesse, imagine this for a second, that you had, 30 seconds left to live. You're surrounded by your family, your friends, all the authors that you've helped put out into the world to spread their messages. What was the final piece of advice or your final words that you would pass on to them, man?
I wouldn't say anything. I just sit there and smile. If I only have 30 seconds left, I'm just going to enjoy it with everybody around me that you described. And probably at the very end, I say, that was fun. Can you do it again?
Oh, love it, man. Awesome. So Jesse, man, thank you so much for being on the show, man. Thank you for all that you've shared, brother. And so for the people who are listening or watching, where's the best place to learn more about what you're doing if they want to start becoming an author?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. I'm pretty easy to find, jessekrieger.com, lifestyleentrepreneurspress.com. If you're interested in creating a book, launching it, and you want to know how to get started, go to bestsellerthisyear.com. Got a 4-part video training with resources and stuff I'm happy to share. And that's it. Hit me up on Facebook, grab a copy of Lifestyle Entrepreneur, take action in your life, and let me know what the results are.
Awesome, Jesse, man. Thank you again, guys. And we'll add that into the show notes as well. So absolute honor to have you here, man. The author's secret weapon.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. And so, guys, this wraps up another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Remember to head on over to richardfu.com to get the show notes. And remember to head on over to iTunes to rate the show so that we can get Jesse's message out there. We need to spread this stuff out there, guys, because we can't keep this as a best kept secret anymore. So this wraps up for this episode. So remember to go out there, go live with love, and go smash it. I'll see you again on the next one.